Hi creative friends, I'm Jane from Sustain My Craft Habit and welcome back to Thrifted Thursday. This week we're transforming a thrift store cutting board into an adorable fall sign as well as a glass jar into a Hobbit hovel. So let's get started. My sister picked up this melamine cutting board from her local thrift store for $1.25. So I thought it'd be the perfect surface to try out something that I'd been wanting to try for a while, and that's doing a transfer with a printout from my inkjet printer. I started by giving the surface a coat of white chalky paint and then drying that. At this point, it still looked kind of streaky to me, so I gave it another coat with the white chalky paint, but in the cross direction, and then made sure that was completely dry before moving on to the next step. Found these fall-themed napkins at the Dollar Tree, and after separating it to just one ply, I took my water brush pen and traced around the inside to just cut that section out. Next, I used some Mod Podge and glued my little piece of tissue onto that painted cutting board. I let that dry absolutely completely before moving on to the next step, which was to place down my printout. So this little printout says "Give thanks" with a grateful heart, and you can find the printable for that over at sustainmycrafthabit.com. And I put a heavy coat of Mod Podge over the printed side and then place that down onto my surface. Now the key here is to let this dry completely, ideally overnight. I did this craft during a Facebook Live, and so I was in a bit of a rush to finish the project. So I really just used my heat tool to dry it up as much as I could. And while that was drying, I finished the other parts of the project. But again, it would have turned out better if I'd left it overnight. I just used a bit of sandpaper to trim off the edges of the napkin. I then created a simple bow with this wide green ribbon I picked up also at the Dollar Tree and glued that in place on the handle of the cutting board. And then I dug into our mom's collection of dried flowers. She dried all of these from her garden using silica drying crystals. So I picked out the ones that would coordinate with the napkin, the burgundies and yellows and more neutral colors, and carefully glued them around the bow. Now it was time to see if that image transfer would work. I used some water and a rag and carefully wet the paper, and then as the paper was getting wet, I was rubbing off that basically layer of paper to reveal the design that had stuck to the cutting board and the Mod Podge underneath. With this technique, it's best to go slowly so you can even let that layer dry and then do it again until you're happy with the result. I added a couple more flowers and then a sprinkling of diamond dust over the "Give thanks with a grateful heart" phrase. And I just love how this looks. Really budget friendly with this thrift store cutting board for fall. For the second craft, I used this glass jar. It looks like a terrarium jar from, again, the dollar store. I think it was about $2, and decided to make it into a fun little magical Hobbit hovel. I started by placing a block of floral foam and gluing that in place so that it wouldn't shift around. I covered that with some green moss from my garden, but you could also use moss from the dollar store. And then I placed 2 large rocks into the back side of the glass bowl and covered those with a bit of moss. So this was to create the door of the Hobbit hovel. And I originally thought about creating the door using bits of branches. And so I'm fashioning them here together. But in the end, it ended up being too chunky for a door, and you'll see I'll just use it as a fence. So I went to plan B and painted it with a mixture of light and dark brown paint, and just to create this rustic wood style door. I also used a little bit of the paint to create a window peeking out from underneath the moss. Next, I added a little pathway to the hovel with some pebbles from the beach. And the vision was really to make this whimsical and fun. And it was actually part of an event that the theme was mushrooms. So I had these cute wooden mushrooms from the Dollar Tree and started painting the stems white. I also cut some pine cone florets, painted them white, and attached them onto a little wire stem and placed those inside. So this was really to create kind of a floral garden in my terrarium. I painted the tops of the mushrooms red and added some white polka dots so that they would look like really cute toadstools, and then placed them in and around the display. It was looking so cute. So after adding a few more flowers, some white ones and pink ones, I cut out some simple butterfly shapes in white and yellow paper and glued them around different areas of the display. Finally, I thought that this piece needed a little sign, so the sign says Hobbitville, and I tucked that right in there. And there is the adorable little Hobbit hovel from Upcycled Elements, Natural Elements. I have it actually out under my covered porch, and I just can't help but smile every time I see it coming in my front door. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed these 2 thrift store upcycling ideas. Let us know in the comments below which one is your favorite. We'll see you again next week. Bye!